A very good evening and welcome to this week's episode of iON Business. This week's episode I would like to speak about impact on government grant on businesses. As we are going through difficult time in our lives, whether it's business, family and everything that rotates around it. Today's guest I have three very well-known faces. Today I have on my right Dr. Sanwar Chowdhury, accountant, entrepreneur, community activist. Then we have on my further right Martin Real, who is the head of family bowling. And then we have Samad Pai, who is the director of Spice Lounge. Very good evening to you, gentlemen, and welcome to this week's episode of iON Business.
Assalamu alaikum.
Gentlemen, as we are in this very difficult situation, okay, Samad Bhai is really on terms of the restaurant, what you're facing. Sanwar Bhai could really tell me, you know, the grants that we had from the government, has it really benefited the business in whole? The 10,000 grant that was given by the council, the £25,000, in terms of the staff have been furloughed, yes, they are at home. Do you think that has really benefited the business itself?
I think we're going through some exceptional times. I personally believe the grants and the government help that came too much, too quickly. It should have been spread out. We need those grants now. Businesses are suffering now. They're running out of cash now, not perhaps 3 months ago. They could have managed those early 1 or 2 months. I think later on salary furloughs were good, but I think they needed to think about it, do a more a top-up model like what Germany did. So I think what we did was, this is all new to us anyway, so everybody didn't know what they were doing. I think we locked down far too late. We should have knocked down in January. That would have helped us not pay out as much as we did. But I think now, ending in October, when the second wave is about to hit, I think the government has done too much too quickly, and they haven't really planned it out.
You're saying it's a second wave, yeah? We are on second week, third week of school opening, and we have about 360 plus school closures. Really, do you gentlemen, acknowledge that the school has it opened too early? Should have been done differently? The virus is it spreading from school students, and is it going? What?
I think this. I don't know. Samad will agree, but the eat out to help out has really exasperated this pandemic. It's really spread this virus more than it needed to. The school opening without the proper precautions might have helped in little ways as well. But we knew that a second wave was coming. Winter was about to come September, October time. We knew during the colder months the virus would pick up. But luckily we're now facing, we've got much better facilities to test for positive cases. So we couldn't test those before. But even though those have been tested, I know 3 people that were tested positive, and within 3, 4, 5 days they were well enough, and within 10 days they were fully recovered to come back to work. So even though more positive cases are coming along, we're not getting the illnesses that sort of result in deaths that we used to in March, April, that we used to have before.
Martin, I mean, you work with a lot of families. In terms of family life, how has the COVID-19 affected your business or your profession? Yeah. How difficult has it been in that situation, or the situation that we're in?
Well, every law firm is a business as well as being a community service. And in our case, we've noticed not only an increase in the number of people coming to us with domestic violence issues and stress in the family, leading to really relationship breakdowns.
So more increase of this pandemic onto the domestic violence has increased.
Particularly with children. I imagine being effectively on house arrest for 6 months, quite apart from the need to self-discipline. Not every parent has the time or opportunity to to run a household in that situation. No one's ever done it before. So it has resulted in increased stress, increased domestic violence. My particular business is pretty much funded by the government because domestic abuse cases are government funded. So in terms of financially, we've been shielded somewhat from the effects of the pandemic. Domestic violence is seen as a ring-fenced sort of area. The government's always going to assist with funding it. But I do worry about if this is to continue. There have been some false starts. There have been some mistakes clearly made, as your guest has indicated. We locked down late. We missed opportunities. The testing, too little, too late, frankly. Other countries seem to be more on the ball. Italy tested at the airport, and so on. And as a result, we're now seeing a huge rise in cases. But on the positive side, the severity of the illnesses, the NHS are getting better at treating it. They found out that a very cheap drug, dexamethasone, can help it, and so on and so forth. And so the hospitals haven't seen the pressure, despite the large number of positive cases. So that's a positive sign. But we are in a very serious situation.
Do you think that coming to the winter month that we could be in a sort of national lockdown? Do you think that could really happen? What do you anticipate?
I don't think that will be the case, and the reason is that economically, the cost of this has been astronomical. Not only here but in the US and other countries. And the government realises that at some point in time it's all got to be paid for. All this debt will have to be paid back, and the taxpayers in future generations will have to pay it back. It's only 10 years since the financial crisis, and we're still paying for that. So there's no stomach for a lockdown across the country, but I believe that local lockdowns and more targeted initiatives may well and already have taken place in Leicester and so on.
Samad bhai,
Yes.
your business is quite in an influential area. Suppose he went into a lockdown in that particular area. Okay, business owners like yourself. Okay, what sort of help? Would you want from the government? Okay, it's not in a lockdown. Is there grants available? Is there financial help available? Obviously, if it is down in a localized lockdown, what sort of help could you ask the government for?
I think in terms of the help from the government that we've had so far, it's been more than adequate in terms of what they've given. I don't think we could ask for any more. And I think they were under the pressure from the general public, from businesses, from the citizens of the United Kingdom to give out the help that they did, and I think they were in somewhat pressure to do so. I know our doctor has said, maybe they done too much too quick. That may have been the case, but I think at the time it was felt that they're not doing enough and not doing it soon enough. When they were giving out the grants, people were waiting. When's my grant coming through? My application's been submitted. Why have I not had an email reply to say it's been seen to and it's being processed? So that sort of thing. I think given the situation, you have to follow it through as and when the task in hand. So now we've had the first wave. We're anticipating a second wave, and the only as our good lawyer here has just said, I don't think UK will be able to do a national lockdown purely on a financial level. The first one is pretty much left the government pocket empty. So to have a second wave and to have a second national lockdown, I think financially the implications are far too catastrophic, as Mike said.
Salawai, do you specialize in accountancy? Okay, we had I think a lot of small businesses was confused in terms of the help out and eat out. Okay, whether they pay for was there VAT on it and so on. what do you have to say to our viewers, in your special, in terms of what you specialize in terms of tax and reasons and VAT?
I think small businesses have been given a huge amount of relief, including VAT relief. But one thing, just to get a bigger picture, we've been hit by a triple whammy. First of all, over the last 3 years, we've had a deficit in government. There's been no leadership across the political spectrum. So we're not just talking about the Conservatives, but the Labour Party. Neither parties have really got themselves together over the last 3 years. So since the Brexit, which was the biggest disaster, in my view, that the UK could face, we've just been going downhill. This crisis hit as soon as the recent leadership competition took place within the Conservative Party. They were too busy December, January time.
Just to stop you, we don't have any Conservative or Labour supporters, so really if to defend it or...
I'm just talking about the political spectrum.
In a broader picture.
Just generally. So a lack of leadership to start off with. Secondly, we were hit by COVID that came along. And the third problem is we don't really know how to get out of it. So we don't know when it's going to end. So whether it's going to be a second pandemic, a third pandemic. So in terms of the help that's been given...
Well, the Conservative government has helped the public and the businesses with the furlough scheme, with the grant that is. So they have done certain... they have helped in a certain way.
They've helped up to the tune of £2 trillion. Overall economy is going to be hit by about 2 trillion. Now somebody's going to have to pay for that. On the negative side, we're all going to have to end up paying for it. The government earns no money. It either taxes people in order to collect that money,
of course,
or
yes.
It borrows it. It can only borrow up to a certain limit, and then where does it borrow from? So we've got goodwill from which the government has been able to borrow so far. So they've been able to give us money, they've been able to give us help, especially the salary furlough. That's been immense help to a lot of small businesses. But not everybody's been captured within that safety net. About 1.5 million sole traders and self-employed people haven't been covered, and they're struggling. They are now on universal credit. So small businesses like restaurants and so on that we typically know, have been helped immensely. They've been given VAT relief, which they're not going to have to pay for some time.
So your self-employed plumbers, self-employed carpenters have not been helped in that, in that manner.
Same way, that's right. The Eat Out and Help Out scheme, I think, should have really been spread throughout the week so that customers were encouraged to come out, re-get into the nightlife without having to cram that event within a 3-day window. It has helped somewhat, but it has also created some chaos and has probably spread the virus even more.
Thank you. Your background in accountancy, has this pandemic, or the work of accountants, a lot of small businesses they don't have in-house accountant, in-house solicitors. How much workload has a firm of accountants is taking up extra workload to deal with the HMRC, with the furlough scheme, with the grant, with the,
Well, accountancy firms themselves have been hit because obviously we reduced number of staff. Not all staff were able to come into work. But the workload has increased significantly. In terms of dealing with furloughs, the government rules have become stricter over time. So we need to make sure that all of those guidelines are being followed, especially by our clients. Beyond that, the VAT, although it doesn't have to be paid, or it doesn't have to be paid immediately, still needs to be accounted for. Mm-hmm. So the normal compliance work in relation to VAT, in relation to payroll, in relation to tax, and even year-end accounts still continues and still needs to be done.
Continues as it is, so the VAT has to be paid and tax have to be paid.
Absolutely, and our workforce is operating about 60% capacity at the moment because others aren't able to come in because they are not well or are social distancing. So our office, structurally, we've been affected slightly. But I think overall, we've been able to rise to the occasion and help out every client and non-clients that have actually asked us for help. So with the bounce back loans, for example, we've helped over 800 businesses obtain their rightful bounce back loans, and that has helped businesses significantly. But again, if that was staged over a few months, that might have been more effective
than a short window to claim. And
absolutely.
Let's bring Martin in here. Martin, I mean, obviously, since the lockdown, I mean, you, as a law firm, there were, like you said, increase in domestic violence. And how difficult was it to communicate with your client? The courts were closed. Some of them were on sort of very small window of looking at the cases. How difficult was it? I mean, you know.
Well, in terms of the courts, although they weren't strictly closed, they completely changed the way in which they've worked. Some types of business, like for example evictions, have been paused. So
that gave you a little bit more time on their hands.
Maybe, but they obviously. I remember clearly the day when the lockdown happened, when I actually was at court with a family with 5 children, and there were sort of horrified faces, and the news had just broken that you shouldn't be, attending court at all, and social distancing and so on, and it was all new. Since then, the courts nationally have had to rapidly invoke telephone hearings, video hearings, dealing with a lot of stuff on paper rather than having a personal attendance of litigants. And of course you can see that down the line there will be a question mark from some about whether that gives a fair trial, whether that is a fair process. But in terms of the firm, we've had to adapt. We've had to rewrite software. We've had to completely rethink our business model. We've had to deal with clients at a distance over the phone. It's been a challenge. But like all businesses, a recession, for whatever reason, is also an opportunity. And those that adapt and move into that space and see the opportunity can do well. So it's not all negative.
So yes, the impact, some business will sell the wave and survive to the next one, and some, who doesn't adapt will suffer.
Exactly. It's all about adapting to the situation.
But that's, going back to that, Samad bhai, I mean, you'll see in your industry, the closures of restaurant and so on. I'm sure. I mean, some time ago when we had you on this show, we spoke about it, and there are closures, there are difficulties are facing within the restaurant sector.
Yeah, I think in terms of what Martin just said, adapting to the current situation or whatever given situation, very, very important. But at the same time, just adapting to something doesn't really mean that you're going to benefit from it or you're going to be able to survive the wave. I mean, it's really down to your individual business, what type of business and where you're located, I'm quite fortunate. I am in a good area, very nice area, but at the same time it has its negatives. And the negatives are that, not everyone are of sort of a younger age, so I'm sort of 50 plus. So it's a lot of sort of semi-retired people, second home people, perhaps a lot of them are not so social media aware. So in terms of advertising, when we had the lockdown, I weren't able to perhaps do leaflet drops or advertise in any other way where we can physically take paper to someone's door. So how do you capture that audience? How do you let someone know we're actually still open, but we're operating as a takeaway, or we've just introduced a delivery service? So those are the kind of hurdles that you have to sort of overcome, and how do you overcome them? So we had to rethink as well, we did a lot of social media advertising. Luckily we've got a good local following, so when we decided that we're going to stay open, we're going to help our local community, we're going to do lots of sort of key worker benefit, free food, etc. The word of mouth was carried forward, and a lot of our locals came to our restaurant and said, look, we're supporting you. We found people who visited our restaurant perhaps once every 2 weeks to come and have a meal inside. They were having a takeaway once or twice a week, just to show that they're supporting us, and that is something I will never ever forget, and that gratitude from me will live on forever. You know, so I think community spirit is very, very important.
So, Roy, the business rates, it will come to an end in April. Do you think that could, in April, come to April, do you think that could follow on for some time more, or do you think, with non-payable for the business rate, do you think that could continue? Do you think that should continue?
Well, over 50% of all employees in the UK are employed by small businesses like Samad's. And I think Samad has done extremely well because he's been very dynamic, very energized in trying to adapt to the new situation. But not all businessmen have been able to do that. I think all the help, including business rates, needs to be continued for a time to come, because businesses are suffering in terms of rent payments. They're having to pay landlords, commercial landlords, full rent. Very few tenants have been given any leeway in that regard. And I think commercial landlords have been very unfair in that regard, but they haven't had any help from governments either. So I think the help that's been given by the government needs to continue, perhaps not to the extent that they have, but needs to continue to support small businesses. But you need to remember, we're not just restaurants anymore. Our community covers a lot more different businesses than restaurants alone.
So this is what I was talking to Martin earlier on. It's not just restaurant. The restaurant has a supporting domino effect.
Yes.
Sort of like a grocery supplier, a butchering supplier, a bakery supplier. So
the supply chain is definitely affected. But of course, big businesses, companies such as Marks and Spencer's, shutting down will have a ripple effect on the whole economy. And there will be unemployment. There will be bad news to come. It's hidden at the moment. There are a lot of zombie employers at the moment that are holding on to staff because of the salary furloughs. So we need to be a lot more leaner and meaner in the way that the government helps. It has helped a lot, and I think people are grateful for it. But now we need to look for the long term, because we need to survive. The government, as I've said, doesn't print money. It can't print money. It has to either borrow it or raise taxes in order to collect it. And at the moment they aren't collecting much in taxes, so they've been borrowing. What do they do next in order to support the next 18 months?
When you said leaner and meaner, what I would like to ask Martin is, the government is unaccountable for £3 billion. Either they paid out mistakenly or it was claimed fraudulently. These sort of, I know you don't specialize in that thing, but as a personal opinion, what do we do? As a public, or how do we get the awareness out that it isn't what we what has been? What do you say? What do you say in that terms?
I think the problem is talking about the public service side of things. We're in danger of forgetting that all government services have also been affected. The HMRC. But every single aspect of government, the Ministry of Justice, they've all had people working from home. They've all had, so compliance and enforcement of anything has been a problem. The police stretched to the limit, and they've had to concentrate their resources on areas which they've had to prioritise. So, for example, with legal aid, they just won't accept bills from legal aid firms in many areas because they don't have the staff in the offices to process them. Sometimes they accept them electronically, but sometimes they just make payments on account. So once again, they're kicking the can down the road. And I think with other businesses, they will find that the opportunity, if I can put it that way, for those who want to cheat the system is that much greater. Because there isn't the enforcement.
I think fraud and error could be over £100 billion because we're just talking about salary furloughs. Think about the VAT, think about the rates, think about the corporation tax, think about all of those other things.
That hasn't been.
When that is fully, when the dust cloud clears, we will see
much more greater.
that there is a lot more. And unfortunately, businesses will fail legitimately, and as a result losses will occur. But whether that failure was recognized early enough to say, look, we're insolvent, we shouldn't be trading, or whether they continue trading insolvent will be
21 শতাব্দীর অত্যাধুনিক প্রিন্টিং মেশিন দিয়ে প্রিন্টুডের যাত্রা শুরু। সকল ধরনের প্রিন্টিং সুবিধা দিয়ে একমাত্র আমরাই দিচ্ছি ইউভি টেকনোলজির বিজনেস কার্ডস, ওয়েডিং কার্ডস, বার্থডে কার্ডস, ইনভাইটেশন কার্ডস। আরও থাকছে লিফলেট, পোস্টার ইন মেনু সহ ঘর বা রেস্টুরেন্টের ইন্টেরিয়র করার জন্য আমরা ওয়ালপেপার ডিজাইন করে থাকি। প্রিন্টুডে মানেই অনুভূতির ছোঁয়া। প্রিন্টুডে 107 রেলওয়ে আর্চেস, টানব্রিজ স্ট্রিট, লন্ডন, E2 6JG। Print today. তিলোত্তমা ঢাকা নগরীর অলিতে গলিতে ছড়িয়ে আছে নানা রূপ, রং আর শত বছরের ঐতিহ্য। আর সেই পুরনো ঢাকার ঐতিহ্যবাহী খাবারের স্বাদ নিয়ে ম্যানর পার্কের নান্না বিরিয়ানি। ইউরোপের মাটিতে একমাত্র আমরাই দিচ্ছি অথেন্টিক পুরনো ঢাকার কাচ্চি বিরিয়ানি, খিচুড়ি, নেহারি, চটপটি সহ আরো অনেক।
They action something and then they call and say, I've done this. What is the point?
Your suggestion is go, because
Absolutely.
you have employed the lawyers in their country, get their advice, get their
I always, before I make a decision, I say, look, this is what I like to do. How are you advising me? What, do you think I should do this? And this is the service that I'm paying for. And rightly they're giving me the correct guidelines to follow.
Samad bhai, we're going on a commercial break. Viewers, don't go away. We'll be right back after the commercial break.
একুশ শতাব্দীর অত্যাধুনিক প্রিন্টিং মেশিন দিয়ে প্রিন্টুডের যাত্রা শুরু। সকল ধরনের প্রিন্টিং সুবিধা দিয়ে একমাত্র আমরাই দিচ্ছি ইউভি টেকনোলজির বিজনেস কার্ডস, ওয়েডিং কার্ডস, বার্থডে কার্ডস, ইনভাইটেশন কার্ডস। আরও থাকছে লিফলেট, পোস্টার ইন মেনু সহ ঘর বা রেস্টুরেন্টের ইন্টেরিয়র করার জন্য আমরা ওয়ালপেপার ডিজাইন করে থাকি। প্রিন্টুডে মানেই অনুভূতির ছোঁয়া। প্রিন্টুডে 107 রেলওয়ে আর্চেস, টানব্রিজ স্ট্রিট, লন্ডন, E2 6JG। Print today. তিলোত্তমা ঢাকা নগরীর অলিতে গলিতে ছড়িয়ে আছে নানা রূপ, রং আর শত বছরের ঐতিহ্য। আর সেই পুরনো ঢাকার ঐতিহ্যবাহী খাবারের স্বাদ নিয়ে ম্যানর পার্কের নান্না বিরিয়ানি। ইউরোপের মাটিতে একমাত্র আমরাই দিচ্ছি অথেন্টিক পুরনো ঢাকার কাচ্চি বিরিয়ানি, খিচুড়ি, নেহারি, চটপটি সহ আরো অনেক ঢাকাই খাবার। পুরনো ঢাকার স্বাদ নিতে আজই চলে আসুন ম্যানর পার্কের নান্না বিরিয়ানিতে। লন্ডনে আমাদের আর কোনো শাখা নেই। নান্না বিরিয়ানি।
ক্রয়, বিক্রয় বা বাসা ভাড়ার কথা ভাবছেন? লিভিং প্রপার্টি আপনাদের পাশেই আছে। আমরা রেন্ট, বাই অ্যান্ড সেল স্পেশালিস্ট। আপনার পছন্দের হাউস, ফ্ল্যাট কিংবা অ্যাপার্টমেন্ট খুঁজে পেতে আমাদের সাথে যোগাযোগ করুন। আমরা আপনার পছন্দ ও বাজেট অনুযায়ী প্রপার্টি খুঁজে বের করব। বিস্তারিত জানতে ভিজিট করুন www.livingproperties.co.uk। ফোন 0207 247 0220।
Evening and welcome back to iON Business. I hope you've been enjoying what my guest has to say and understanding what they have to say for these difficult times that we are facing. I have on my right Dr. Sanwar Chaudhry. Following I have Martin, and then I have Samad Bhai, our very well known businessman from Oxfordshire. Gentlemen, welcome back again, and let's talk about how family life has affected. Yes, it's affected business, but everything is a circle. Everything works in a clockwise manner. So business is suffering. Family life. How do you think or if you have a personal thing, is affected the time at home, the lockdown, 3 months or so of lockdown at home, maybe you have grown children, maybe you have younger children, has it, how difficult? Sanwar Bhai, please tell me.
It's been a wake-up call for everyone. I think it's bonded families together. We spend a lot more time.
We all say that we need to spend more time together, more time as family time.
Yeah? We have, yeah. I think not only that, but I think we spend more time around the house. My wife has learned, how to make rasmalai and rasgulla.
I thought he was going to say
better than nothing. I mean, like
how to cook. Sorry,
right, I taught her that years ago. But I think again, Martin's here, so family lawyer. But I think again, it's been a wake-up call for everyone. I think we've come a lot together, but we are now going to do things a lot more differently. I've got 3 sons and a daughter. They've all been working from home. So working from home is something that does work for certain businesses.
One of my sons worked for the government. I think we should have encouraged that before, but now that we are a little bit more, we're put on it on the spot to do it.
Yeah, work-life balance will definitely change. So a lot more work will take place at home. Of course, what you do can't take place from home. The physical side will still need to be maintained.
But saying that you've spent good time where Martin's profession has been a little bit more busier because of the lockdown, because of the stress, because of spending too much time at home. So, Martin has seen what a lot of us viewers, we need to talk about it. We need to understand, especially within the Bangladeshi community, we can't just sweep it under the carpet. The domestic violence, I would like this to be a topic. It is a business program, but I would like this to be a topic in another show to talk about domestic violence within our community, within the whole of the community, whether it's Bangladeshi or any other community. But in our Bangladeshi community, we do try to hide it away. We don't talk about it. And Martin specializes in that, and gentlemen, we have a caller online. Let's see who's calling. A very good evening.
Hello?
Good evening.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that happy 4th.
So we couldn't understand your thing. Can you say it? Oh, we've lost the caller. Caller, do try again, and we'll try and speak into you. So going back to Martin, this is something that we, in Sanwar Bhai's profession, in Samad Bhai's profession, we don't hear about it a lot. We don't talk about it a lot. It is in our community, and we do ignore it, hide it. And Martin, like he said before, we have seen a lot of increase in these sort of situations. Martin, how obviously, this lockdown, staying at home, you faced certain issues. How have you dealt with that personally? How have you dealt with that as a business?
Yes. Well, I think, of course, it's important to recognise that there are some very happy families out there, and they have welcomed perhaps the chance to spend more time together. Perhaps they never saw Dad because he was always at the office. So there is that positive. But where there are fractured families, dysfunctional families with issues, this has heightened and brought to the fore those problems and issues. People feel, as it were, in lockdown, as if there's no help available, they can't get out of the situation. And we have seen an uptick in the number of cases being referred to us. But also, interestingly, an uptick in the number of people who don't go ahead and pursue that to the courts, because they think, perhaps as some here might have thought, that the courts aren't open, or that the court just can't deal with it, or they don't know what to do. The police are under stress, all of the support services are under stress. So it's been a challenging time, but we have gone out to make sure that we are available around the clock to people in this situation, so that we can help and advise them. And business-wise, of course, that is also the right thing to do, quite apart from morally and ethically. And many other firms, of course, have taken the opposite view and said, well, we're in a lockdown, we're not going to get much work, and some areas of legal work have fallen off a cliff. There have been no evictions. There have been, very few, very much less work in conveyancing. And
talking about
buying and
eviction,
selling business.
has that still the eviction? Has it ended? Has it carried on?
It's now come to an end, that moratorium, if you like, on evictions, and but there's going to be a massive backlog.
It's extended to January now, isn't it?
I believe it was extended up to September, and I know there's a difference between the commercial and residential evictions, but there is a massive backlog to clear. The courts are not sitting in person. How are they going to clear it? I defer to my friend on that.
Do you think the financial implications made a difference in terms of some of your clients coming to you with, as you said, dysfunctional families or violence within the home? Do you think the financial implication, people not having work and people not having the same amount of income coming in on a monthly basis?
Yes, I think those who, as I said, there are other happy families that are getting on well, but lack of money, wondering where the next meal is coming from, and we've seen that with the increased use of food banks and everything. It's put additional
and the restriction
strain.
to go out
Yes.
and get the food was another difficult one. If you were trying to get a delivery in, you had to wait a certain amount of time before you can get a delivery.
I don't know if I can add to what Martin just said, but although our business is known to be in an affluent area, the number of people who, because I put out a message to say, look, free meals for all key workers, all NHS workers, and also to any vulnerable and anyone unemployed, who's lost their job. We didn't ask any questions to verify, have you really lost your job? So look, if you're saying it, that's it. It's good enough for us. The number of people who had free meals from us within my locality, it's astonishing. I was amazed myself. So it just goes to show, I think,
give and take in the community, making this, being there for the community.
And the benevolence of traders such as our catering industry has been immense. It's been recognized by the government because what they have done is gone beyond duty.
With the deliveries, working at a difficult time.
One thing, just to add, and sorry to interrupt, one customer said to me last week, the food that we were giving out free during lockdown, they thought the government were paying us to give out this free food. So the notion that we're giving free NHS food and free food to the vulnerable, etc., I think not everyone actually understood where that food is coming from, i.e. the financing. Because all they saw on the news was, right, we're giving 10k to businesses or 20k to businesses, and we're giving them relief on business rates. And some of the customers are actually thinking, the businesses are being paid to provide this.
Again, there was a lot of confusion in the general public and understanding of the Eat Out to Help Out.
Absolutely.
Was it 50% of the bill? I mean, me and Martin was talking about
that month was crazy.
lot of difficultness was faced, or a lot of understanding of what the public was thinking, is that 50% of my bill? So I spent £200, is that £100 I'm paying? So a lot of issues, I mean, I don't know from your experience, have you faced this?
I've had a number of colleagues and peers who called up and said, look, we've had this problem with the customer claiming they should be getting 50% off their meal. I said, it's 50% off the food and soft drinks, end of, and £10 is the cap per person. I think some of the businesses themselves didn't understand, number one, which they should have before they signed up. But again, that's where your professional services come in, your accountants.
Accountant services.
Your accountants are there to advise you. Call them, that's if you, and the customers, I think they were just playing ignorance, some of them, they know what the game was. But if they can get away saying, we're supposed to get 50%, and the business then gives them 50% off there on a waiter.
Restaurants have been giving away 50% of the total bill, which they can't claim. So nobody, I mean, what do they do with that? So they've given 50%. I have reports of saying a lot of restaurants are giving away 50% of the bill. But how do they sort of claim back these losses that they've made, or do they have to fork it out from the pocket because they've given 50% off?
Well, I mean, the bigger picture is this pandemic has added about 23% to business costs. So your business that wouldn't have spent that money, you're now spending 23% more on costs and servicing and protection and distancing and so on. Social distancing probably means you're only 55%, 60% capacity.
Absolutely. I mean, in terms of social distancing and the space that we've had to make, I mean, the month of August is pretty much in level with what we would normally do on an August month. Because we've had reduced seats, we've had to logistically work out how we can maximize numbers, still maintain social distancing without crowding the restaurant.
Absolutely.
So it was a logistical nightmare that month, because as the doctor rightly said, in terms of having the Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday eat out to help out crammed into 1 month, which was very concentrated for the restaurants itself and also the customers. I saw places on the news, on social media, there were queues outside. So where's the social distancing there? And they were like, literally queuing as if there was a sale going on.
There were fights outside.
There were.
So the police had more work to do, on top of everything else, trying to sort of space out these lines. The councils have actually intervened on a Saturday night at 9 o'clock. So in every aspect, it's more cost.
Yeah. I think, to add again, what the initiative they took in order to boost the economy in terms of restaurants, cafes, hospitality in general, with the Eat Out to Help Out, I think they did what they set out to do. The goal was to get people out, to get people to the restaurants. That worked perfectly, but I think it's what the repercussions of it wasn't thought out.
The impact of the future. I mean, is that was a short term, but for
I think that's what's
long-term
been happening from day one since lockdown. They've been implementing strategies without thinking about exit strategies, and that's where we have fallen foul. There's no extra strategy.
So having the school open up early, having this Eat Out to Help Out, giving the public the opportunity to go out more, spike going up. So we are on report of yesterday, 4,500 people a day. So this has increased, every day is increased.
But the good news is the spike is not translating into deaths.
Yes.
So before that was the case, we're now testing more because we now have mechanisms for identifying the virus with the antibodies that relate to it. But luckily it's not then maturing.
I think the social awareness is much more now, so people are aware of the consequences, people are aware of what they need to do, hence the reason why we've got a reduced number of deaths. It may go up in terms of increased number of positive cases, but the deaths will decrease because people are aware of what to do, how to stay safe. You can accidentally catch it. No one's going to purposely, but at least they know they need to wash their hands constantly. They need to stay in smaller groups. They can't visit X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. So I think that's that's part of the reason why perhaps.
So coming to the 6 rules, okay. Sanoma's business, Martin's professional business, probably don't come into that, but businesses like yourself, the businesses that you run, the number of 6, how difficult are you going to find?
I actually welcome that. I actually welcome it because it makes my life a lot easier. Having smaller groups, limiting groups to 6 people, in my opinion, for my restaurant, which isn't a massive venue, works perfectly for me because if I have 6 people coming in, 4 people coming in, it's easier to have that table served. Indian restaurants are renowned for big groups. Indian restaurants are renowned to have a lot of, especially Christmas coming up, 20s, 30s, some restaurants, bigger restaurants, 50 people in one group. The logistical nightmare trying to serve 50 people, the chefs, the stresses, It's enormous. So I welcome the 6 group.
Fantastic. Martin, let's bring Martin in. Martin, would you welcome, do you think there should be other help for small businesses if we get a local lockdown, if we can get another, businesses obviously are going to struggle, are going to close. Do you think that should be, helped out,
Well, it's difficult because there are differences in terms of the situation in the north of England, places like Leicester. It's all new to everyone. The government is sort of feeling its way. But I think that one of the most difficult decisions that a politician has to make is, how is this going to be paid for? Can I justify this from public expense? Is the paying of this benefit going to result in a larger benefit to the community later on? And I think the data is that really some of the help hasn't been targeted correctly. We talked about Eat Out to Help Out. It affects 3 days of the week. There are another 4 days of the week it didn't affect. Perhaps the government thought people would go out on those days anyway, I don't know. But the end result of that was a lot of people going out on certain days, and with all the best intentions.
It was concentrated on the 3 days and
Concentrated
left a
on
void
3
on the
days.
other
Which
4.
really got groups and a lot more people in 3 days rather than 6-7 days.
Yeah.
So Nobai, self-employed. So a carpenter, a plumber who is self-employed and he has to isolate, or she has to isolate for 2 weeks. How is any help given to this sort of category of the industry? So 2 weeks of no work. Has there been any help for these sort of businesses, these sort of self-employed people?
I mean, as I said earlier, about 1.5 million self-employed and sole traders have been missed out, and they need help. They haven't been helped. They've had to rely on the social protection, claiming universal credit and so on. So they need to be helped. But one thing I just want to emphasize, statistics show nearly 50% of all new businesses fail within 2 years, which means there were a lot of zombie businesses that would have failed anyway that were helped by these grants, which were given to everyone as long as they had a business bank account, as long as there was a limited company. Yet legitimate people, sole traders and partnerships that were trading legitimately but weren't under that framework, missed out. So again, those that needed it missed out, and those that shouldn't have got it got the full grant, probably got the bounce back loan grants, and again, those businesses would have probably died anyway.
The other thing is, when there is shared office and it's leased by one person or one company, and you have 2 other companies operating from that,
Yes,
they were not entitled to any grant at all.
indeed, absolutely. I mean, again, they needed some parameters in order to give out these grants, but they could have done it at a much better localized, where the information was much more visible basis than the way they've done it. As I've said, they gave it in haste, they gave too much, too quickly.
Too quickly gave it.
Instead of giving that 25,000 grant in a block, they could have spread it over, let's say, 6 months. That would have meant cash flow would have kept on coming in, businesses would have, because it was a wake-up call for business. It wasn't business as usual. So businesses had to change and adapt. And if you had allowed them to adapt, necessity is the mother of all invention. But that necessity was taken away, and businesses were given help at a time, and those funds weren't effectively used. I'm not saying they were misused, but they weren't as effectively used as they could have been. So I think the government decided to do these things without proper advice, proper dialogue, in order, almost as a knee-jerk reaction, in order to maintain popularity as opposed to be efficient with their business decisions.
Is there going to be a harsh consequences for those bounce back loans, in times to come, and the business goes bust? Is it going to be personally, if it is a limited company, will the directors be personally penalized? What?
Well, 3 things. Does the government have enough resources
To carry
to be
that on?
able to investigate everyone? Yes, there will be a certain number that will be chosen, investigated, and perhaps some taken to court. Some will probably face criminal prosecutions, but those will be few and rare. But a lot of these businesses would have failed legitimately. So what can you do about that? Let's say, for example, a car business, that had to pay too much in rent, accumulated a lot of these liabilities very quickly, and suddenly after the grant period was over, they were in an insolvent position, they go bust legitimately.
Who do you
blame?
hold
Those
responsible?
car businesses were going bust before this pandemic. So you can't just say, oh, you've gone bust sort of illegitimately because you've done a fraud. You can't say that, because businesses like Marks and Spencer's, they have gone bust legitimately. Other businesses, big businesses like British Airways and Virgin, they are having to be helped out by new cash inflow. So a lot of these small businesses will legitimate. And how do you differentiate between those that are legitimate failures and those that are illegitimate failures?
Absolutely, absolutely. My worry and my thing is this localized lockdown, Yes, how is it going to be paid for? How difficult it is? How the taxpayer have to pay for it? But should there be, a little bit more help for these business, self-employed people?
Well, Sadiq Khan was talking with the government of shutting London down from tomorrow.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
if London is shut down, all of the related businesses that are supported by that, how do they fund themselves? If money isn't coming in, if a customer doesn't come and eat at some other restaurant, the money isn't generated.
No.
How does he pay the bills?
Absolutely. How do you?
It's a ripple. It's a ripple. So.
But do you think that London could be in a lockdown in whole? Let's say?
I think there's a high probability that we'll be shut down in the next few days.
Martin, do you think the whole of whole?
Well,
would you,
I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer that, but
No,
I would
personally-
surely hope that that isn't the case, because the economic effects of it, the cure is worse than the disease in this case, and we've got to think more inventively and out of the box. In terms of financial management, it's very, very difficult. And I think the government realises that with furlough coming to an end, there's going to be a tsunami of people losing their jobs. There are many things for the government to think about in the next few months that are very serious. And I would say that localised lockdown makes more sense. If you look at the map of London, and I did actually take the trouble to look at it, in terms of the number of cases, the number of deaths in each borough, there is a difference. There's quite a big difference. And targeted local measures could work. But it does take inventiveness on the part of the government.
But I mean, in terms of a borough in London, targeted, localised, how do you police it? How do you?
It's self-policing, isn't it?
Do you understand how difficult to say enforce it? It's going to be very difficult.
Well, it is, but at stations you see that there's an increased. I think I've noticed travel by public transport a lot. There's an increased British Transport Police presence. There are ways, but the coordination, what has been the coordination between the government departments? What has been the thought that's been put into it? Like the doctor said, it's very much knee-jerk. It's very much, what should we do next? Almost panic. And I think it's, you may remember that at the beginning of the lockdown there were these daily briefings and so on. Now we're seeing figures for daily cases almost at the May levels, but very little information. So there's
a lot of the information has been confusing for the general public. I mean, could we, the number 6, as I say, could we have enforced that within the 24 hours of announcement? Did we have to wait for the weekend to be over? Because
why the rule of 6 anyway? In Sainsbury's,
They must have,
there's more than 6 people gathering in one place.
I think they
lots
must
of
have,
places.
They must have.
So,
something
I mean,
to-
if the law, I mean, on that Saturday before it came into force from the Monday, you had people partying before we can, people were up in their groups of 10s, 20s. That has increased a little bit more of the spike.
I think definitely. Although, as I've said again, and the good news is the spike is not killing people. Less people are dying now than they have ever died before. So March, April, May were really danger months. Now we know a lot more about it. We know how to look after it. We don't look after ourselves. But about lockdown, again, Newcastle is under lockdown. Birmingham is under lockdown. Sunderland is under lockdown. So I think you will have a lot more localized lockdown. It's difficult times. It's very difficult.
It's very difficult to understand. But I want, really, to the Bangladesh community. I mean, Sanal Bhai, Samad Bhai, Martin, who works with a lot of Bangladeshi community. We are a little bit further of understanding how we can protect the businesses, the Bangladeshi business oriented. You could go into some grocery shop, but it's very small number of people are following the rules. Please say a few words to encourage them, from the bottom of your heart. We need to push the community to understand and put this as an important, it's a life and death situation. And Sanobai, you have personally faced
trauma in this regard, yes.
Absolutely. So
I think just to give an
it's
internet...
not just business, and the result of that, it affects the business.
My closest friend passed away right at the beginning of this crisis in March. But just to give an international perspective, New Zealand shut down and did everything properly. It's in the worst recession now in its history. So again, doing the right thing doesn't always mean you get the best results. Countries like Mexico and Brazil didn't lock down, yet the death rates haven't been as high as perhaps proportionally it's been in the UK.
Caller on the line, so we
Sure.
can come back to. Very good evening, caller. Good evening to you. Sorry, the line has just dropped. So, caller, please do try again, and we'll go back to Sanwar Chaudhry, who was finishing off what he was saying.
So, one thing that I would advise seriously is keep hold onto your cash. Going forward, bad times are coming. They will come, and they will come very quickly. Obviously, look after yourself health-wise.
So, we're going to have to close this up tonight. Thank you very much to my guests, Dr. Sanwar Chaudhry, Martin, and Samad Bhai. Thank you very much for coming in. Viewers, my advice, my guests' advice and suggestions, please look after yourself, look after each other. Wear your mask wherever you can, sanitize your hand. And if you do have any questions for us in our next episode, please do give us a call, email us, and you can join us every Sunday at 10 o'clock. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening. Look after yourself and look after each other.
Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Najat Islam